I don't know if we're doing a show or not.
I can't tell.
How do you not know?
It pauses for about 30 seconds when I hit the thing. That's why.
How do you
I have to
not
listen
know?
to Sam talk about his sister going to 98 Degrees.
So
tonight.
here
She's
we
going to
go,
98
buds.
Degrees concert.
Is that the Lachey? That's the Nick Lachey band?
I don't know.
Yes.
You guys remember my Backstreet Boys in sync joke from a couple days ago?
Don't.
It was really funny.
I said they were so out of sync. They were like the Backstreet
I
Boys.
remember that now, but I didn't.
You even gave me a yeah.
Why are we talking about
Our
the Backstreet
producer, who's supposed to say you're live,
We're past this, Owen. We're past this.
says, I
I'm
don't
not
even
doing
know.
it.
Letty, he looks at us and says, I don't even know if we're live. If he doesn't know, how are we supposed to know that this is the Dallas Stars pregame show? It's Stars and Bruins. John's losing his mind already because it's his job versus his passion.
Are we live?
So I guess we'll talk about it next, right here.
Okay, we are.
How old is that photo? Well, Stu Barnes is on the bench, so it's a few years back. We love Stu, by the way. Great guy. He was a broadcaster, a player, and a coach for the Dallas Stars. But that's not the focus of that thumbnail. It's Jim Montgomery, and the Stars will be facing him again tonight as they try to play against the Boston Bruins at TD Garden. Alongside Craig Ludwig and Sam Nestler, I'm Owen Newkirk. Thanks for joining us here. We will get you up to just about puck drop, which is scheduled for a little past 6 Central Time. Stars and Bruins. They are both coming off losses on the road. The Stars lose in Buffalo on Tuesday night. And let's begin there because the Bruins got shut out by the Nashville Predators, who finally won a game. We'll talk about that in a minute. The big talking point of that Buffalo game was, Luddy said, lack of urgency. Well, the Stars saw that too. They didn't feel the compete level was very good. In fact, below standards. So let's go right to Pete DeBoer because they had a high-energy practice yesterday after the Sabres game. Not the same night, but the next day. So that would have been yesterday. Battle drills, compete, trying to say that that standard wasn't good enough. And then Pete answered about it today.
I think when we walked out of Buffalo, I think that was one area of the game that I thought we left a little bit on the table. I didn't think we had enough desperation in our game. So, you know, that's something that's got to be part of our DNA and our identity every night. You know, like I told the players, that you don't have to be the biggest team in the league to play heavy, and you don't have to be the fastest team in the league to play fast. You know, but I didn't think we did enough of that.
And he went on, another question was asked, and he said that he didn't feel that Buffalo really got them out of their game, even though they didn't compete hard enough and play as physical as they should. He said if they do that against the Boston Bruins, they will do that.
Well, I think there's a couple teams that feel that they should be playing better, and it's going to collide tonight. I would expect, with everything that's been going on in Boston, that they're going to be revved up in that building. And so it's a good test for Dallas, you know, to be able to go in there and you may have to weather the storm for the first 5 minutes or so. But if you're going to succeed tonight, the word of the day is you're going to have to compete. I mean, it'll be about competing today.
Yeah, I think something interesting with the Bruins is that we keep writing them off, right? It's been at least 2 years where we've said they're finally going to go through into a rebuild, or they're finally not going to be a playoff team. And they always play well. They're coached well. Their system's good. They're going to give you a good game, and I think that's what the Stars should expect, and they have to be ready.
We're going to talk more about the Bruins core and the culture and what's going on right now because Luddy has some interesting stats for it. We'll get to that when we go to our Bruins stuff. But let's first start with the Stars, as it does appear as though they're going to have a lineup change from Tuesday's game against Buffalo. As we look at the forward lines, Oscar Beck is expected to come back into the lineup, and Maverick Bourque, for the first time since being healthy this year, will come out. Guys, everybody around Twitter was seemingly upset because they felt that Maverick Bourque played his best game so far against the Sabres. Does he deserve to come out, or is it just more of a question of somebody had to and he was the one that got picked?
Well, by saying his best game, I don't know if he set a real high bar, in the first couple games that he played. So, but he did get some extra minutes we saw, and he was getting bumped up a little bit. So, It may be just the fact of the situation that the Stars are in themselves, their opponent, and being a revved up game and maybe spending a little bit more time if they expect to spend some more time in their zone tonight because of the opponent. You got a young kid out there that, still isn't up to speed probably as far as defensively, especially.
Well, go back to that lineup again, John, if you would, please. Sam, if it wasn't Maverick Bourque, who else would you have taken out? I think that's why they went with Bourque.
Yeah, it is. I don't think you take anyone else out. I mean, Dodonoff's the only one I can think of that maybe could be playing, definitely could be playing better, but you're not going to take that guy out of your lineup. He brings energy, he brings stuff. So for me, there's two ways. I'm a big believer in giving young players opportunity. I don't believe that a guy gets 3 games as a rookie and doesn't play well and should be scratched. And that's what we've seen in the past, Gurionov and things like that.
Very common.
So I believe in trusting. Give him 10, 15 games. But here's the thing. The Stars have 2 of them. They got Oscar Beck and they got Maverick Bourque. So you have to have guys playing. If they give Bourque 10 games in a row, Beck's sitting out most of those games because, like we just said, the depth on this team is going to be great, but it might hinder some young guys because they can't play 13 forwards.
Now, if you go down the Boston Bruins lineup, which we'll look at our lineup later, but just if you look at their roster, Luds, they're huge. A lot of guys 6'3" and up. They are a beefy roster. Their average size is 6'2", which almost doesn't do it justice. How many big guys? Oscar Beck is a big guy. Maverick Bourque isn't. Maybe that's part of it too.
Well, and it's, again, the Boston Bruins want to get back to their MO. They've always been that kind of a team that when you go to play the Bruins, especially if you beat them, you're going to pay the price to beat them, and they're going to beat you up. They're going to, and so it's not like it was 30 years ago, but it still is part of their identity. I mean, they were for a long time, everybody knew them as the Big Bad Bruins. I don't know if that's the case now, but that's exactly what, starting with Cam Neely, who's sitting upstairs there. That's what he was all about. And I believe that's what they have to be. And that's what a lot of teams have to be when you're in the playoffs. I mean, it's about pushing people out of the fight in the playoffs. And so I think they're looking at them and have their goalie all signed and things like that. And they want to get back to the playoffs and they want to be playing that kind of hockey when they get there.
Let's take a look at the defense and goaltending tonight. The biggest surprise of the day is not the group up on the blue line. It's the goalie. It's Casey DeSmith gets the start tonight, not Jake Ottinger. None of us picked it. Look, us, the Stars broadcasters, I was listening to Heike and Razor's podcast earlier today. They thought Jake was going to play because they recorded it yesterday in Boston. They just assumed it would be Otter versus Swayman in our big storyline of the two $66 million goalies going toe-to-toe, 2 Hockey East opponents, Jake with Boston University, Swayman with the University of Maine. Never miss an opportunity to mention the Black Bears. But this is not the battle we're getting. What are your thoughts on the coaching staff's choice to go with DeSmith tonight, and especially knowing the fact that this is a good you're expecting a good
a desperate team
from both.
Yes.
And Jake Ottinger loves playing in Boston. Played there at BU. Feels like, it's one of those cities. He actually said it's one of my favorite places to be as a city and one of my favorite buildings to play in.
Well, I think you know how I feel because I sent you a text message back when you sent it.
But I
was wondering if you read between the lines on that.
I did.
I think that typically when a backup guy comes in that doesn't play a lot, and players know, and I talked about this before, they're the goalies that are on the ice after practice and they're taking all the shots and, the traffic and all this kind of stuff. You kind of feel sorry for them at times. And and then they get thrown in. They know that they get thrown in and your number one guy is tired and you traveled and you play 3 and 4 nights or something like that. And next thing you know, that guy gets that game against a really good club. And so he's got to stand on his head. And so players find ways to dig in and dig a little deeper to help that goaltender out. And I think that from a coaching standpoint, maybe their thought process could be, our group was leaning too much on a goaltender. And we don't have to be as desperate and have all that urgency that we keep talking about because our goalie's going to keep us in games and we're going to find ways to win. So this may be, I have no clue that, okay, let's throw him in there. And maybe we get that extra little bump about having so-called backup goaltender, and they play a little bit harder, block a few more shots, try to spend less time in their own zone, which is the recipe of trying to beat this team tonight.
Yeah, it kind of confused me a little bit, but I think the Stars need to understand, and I think fans understand now, the Stars have 2 very good goalies, and I think they are going to be very serious about not overplaying Jake Ottinger. So, of course, this is not changing how many games he's going to play, right? It's 1-1. But I think it's less of looking at less of looking at opponents and more of looking at what they want. And for whatever reason, they want him at home. He's been great at home. He's been great in all of his games, and getting him at home against a Blackhawks team on Saturday, I guess, was important. And that gives him almost like a 6. If he just plays on Friday, that gives him 6 days off before they play in Finland. So there's plenty of time, no matter what. I guess they just decided that they'd rather have him at home.
Well, we'll see. Maybe it's what Luddy said. Maybe it's just trying to shake things up, and that's one thing they can do. I would be curious to talk to Jeff Reese or to Pete DeBoer, because typically this is not a spur-of-the-moment decision. They plan this out a lot more than they tell us. And as evidence, the Scott Wedgwood thing. Wedgwood knew the day before the game, the opener, that he was starting over the recovering from injury UC Saros. Then on game day, the Preds, everybody said, well, it's a game-time decision. Could be either one. So was this already planned? And if so, that's fine, but yeah. I'm a little surprised. Hey, Mike Heika just tweeted out the lines in the warm-up in Boston, and they are as we thought they'd be. So it is exactly what we saw. That group with Beck on the left, Steele in the middle, and Blackwell on the right. Dodonov plays with Johnston and Jamie Benn. Luds, you were saying just before we went on the air.
Or were we on the air?
Well,
we never know around
here.
We'll
have to go back and watch the video to be sure, but you were saying something about Wyatt Johnston, center versus wing.
I like Wyatt in the middle of the ice. I think it just seems to me when he's playing the wing and he's coming in from typically that right side all the time, it limits to what he can do. If you come in through the middle of the ice, he can go left or right a little bit more easily, I guess it is. And I know Wyatt can play in his own zone well. He's a good outlet. He can transport the puck out of his own zone. On the wall, it's a little bit more battling. He's not that, the biggest guy on the ice that's got to battle in the corners and things like that. And I think he can use his speed. I don't think we've seen Wyatt's best game yet. I don't think he's played a real good game, to his own standard. And I think that's the right spot for him to do that. And then again, you have the depth. At least your 3 lines are, you have three solid lines that can score goals there.
I don't know about you, Luds. You're a defenseman, so you might not know any more than I do about this. But for me, obviously nowhere near an NHL player when I played hockey. But if I was to switch from center,
find out tomorrow.
If I was to switch from center to wing
tomorrow with us, we'll find out.
We'll find out. If I was to switch from center to wing, especially if I was to switch often, it would be a mental struggle, a physical struggle, at least for a few shifts, getting a shift. It's a very different position. Teams play very fluid now, right? It's not a ton of just being in your lane and you're not staying on the right side of the ice the whole way. But it just seems like they don't make a big enough deal about swapping guys over and over again. They just say they're NHL players. They know how to do both. But it's a very different position, defensively and offensively.
Yeah, and you know what? And I think what's a good example of what coaches feel about centermen versus wingers in the big scheme of things, when they go over and they play in the Olympics and they play in these big tournaments and stuff like that, you'll find that they'll take 8 centermen because centermen are more versatile from the standpoint that they play in the middle of the ice a lot, and so they have to do a lot more work in their own zone. The wingers, though, they come up and down. It's more stop and start. Mm-hmm. That's why I've always felt like for Jamie, as he gets older, I think it's Jamie for better to play in the middle of the ice where he can continue to move and keep up with the younger kids all the time. Because if you have to come into your own zone, stop, get the puck, you got to fight it out against the wall. Centermen are the ones, when the pucks come flying around the wall, they've got to get that puck off the wall as a winger, and then the centerman just makes sure he stays underneath, or if they're going to fly him, so he can kind of stay on the move. I think their energy stays up a little easier, and especially if you're playing it against a team that wants to battle a lot, there's a lot of work that's going on in the corners and on the walls, and that's where I think you spend a lot of energy as a winger.
The Stars played in Boston last year on February the 19th. They lost 4-3 in a shootout. Charlie McAvoy scored the 9th round. It's a skills competition. Basically, it was a tie. Jeremy Swayman finished with 43 saves. Why do I bring this up, though? Because last year's game, Derek Pouliot and Alexander Petrovic both played for the Stars because of injuries to Yanni Hakanpää and Nils Lundqvist, and Miro Heiskanen was away for the birth of his first child. They also had injuries up front to Dodonov and Duchesne, so they only played with 11 forwards, so that I believe it was Columbus was the next game. Then they could have the emergency call-up afterward. Stars are in a much different situation tonight with their cap situation than they were at that point last year. But what is a problem, guys, is playing in Boston in general. The Stars have not been a good team against the Bruins historically. They've lost 4 in a row head-to-head, and 11 of the last 14 meetings, the Bruins are 11-1-2. That's an 8.57 points percentage going back to the 2016-17 season, and they have struggled at TD Garden. Why has it been so bad of a matchup for Stars Bruins in your mind?
Oh, I think because of the way they build their teams. I think in general, in fan bases and everything else that goes along with playing it, but they have an identity. I think, and again, like I say, that it's not exactly what it was a long time ago because the building was different, and they built their teams like Chicago. They built their players, and their teams were built around their building because it was little bandbox and it was hard to move around in there. So the buildings are almost the same, but they still want to have that same identity. I believe that identity for Boston is very similar to a lot of other teams have, that it's built for playoff hockey. You get to the playoffs, you know it's going to be a battle. It's the war of attrition. And so who can ever stay the healthiest and basically push other people out of the game? That's how they want to play the game. And I think the Stars over the years have been this high-flying, exciting, entertaining team. And, I think they feel that they can push them out of the game that way.
Yeah, I was just looking at, I think another answer is that Boston is just very good at home. I mean, I'm just keep clicking back in years, and Boston's in the top 3 points percentage, basically most stats, all the way back to 2005. So a lot of people struggle to play in Boston, I think is another part of that.
And we'll have to give a stick tap to our very own producer, John Anderson, who is a diehard Boston sports fan, as he should, growing up there. But the Bruins have a sellout streak of, I believe, 621 games, regular season and playoffs at the Garden up in Boston. I mean, that's a huge run. And look, Boston's been very good since they won the Cup in 2011. I don't think they've had too many dips in form, but still, to sell out over 600 games in a row is pretty something.
That's crazy.
Well, it's similar to I played in Montreal. I mean,
Just thinking that.
It's kind of the same thing, and the fans get you going, and you don't want to let the fans down. And not only do you not want to let them down, you don't want to hear it when you get outside the building,
right?
And Dallas is there now. I mean, Dallas is a hard place to play, and you have to answer. I don't know if the fans are as critical on the players as maybe in Boston or Montreal or Toronto. Well, Toronto especially.
There's very few markets like Toronto,
Yeah.
Boston, Montreal, Vancouver.
Yeah. So, I mean, in Montreal, you could win 6-7 games in a row, go downtown, and you'd go into a TV store just looking around. The guy said, "What do you need?" "I'm looking at that TV over there." He goes, "Pull your truck around the back." He'd load it in the back. You go on a 3-game losing streak, don't go back in their streak. Don't go back in that store. He's going to say, "I want that TV back." that was just how it worked there. And I'm guessing that Boston is very similar. I mean, they love their Bruins, and so they, as players, what happens when you walk out of that building.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because in Boston right now, they're a 500 hockey team. They're 3-3-1 in their first 7, and you would think that the sky is falling in Beantown. Yes, John is busy right now.
You know why?
Texting our boss.
yeah.
Also, no one calls it Beantown. That's a thing that people not from Boston say. People from Boston say,
right.
but no one actually says it.
But they do have Boston.
Isn't there a
let's be
giant
honest.
bean, or is that in? Isn't there a giant silver bean in
That's Chicago.
Boston? It was Chicago.
That's Chicago.
The reason he was texting.
I
He's
know.
texting somebody in Boston.
Our boss.
By the way,
Texting
he's
my
sitting.
manager.
By the
Texting
way,
on a
he's
boss
sitting
radio.
over there
I
with
just
his
wanted
Boston.
him, I just wanted him to play
Yeah,
The Sky is
He's
Falling.
got his Bruins hat on, his Bruins jersey on, his Bruins socks on, and I'm going to leave
do.
it there because I don't know if he's got a
So I
thong
don't
or
know,
not.
is
But
that-
I
is that
guarantee
just
there's a
today,
logo
John,
on
that
that
you
too. We don't
actually
want to
rolled
see
your
it. Don't
pants
pull
up?
it down.
Did you roll the pants
Oh, you're
up?
making your debut?
Coming on.
There it
the
is.
screen.
Look, we have sock fetishes now, and ankle
yes.
or lower calves being shown today for John. But
Joe Thornton.
look,
And he's got Joe's jersey on.
Bruins fans are upset
This
right
thing's
now.
straight out of Shanghai, Luds.
Friend, Joe
Like
Thornton
20
was.
bucks on eBay.
Yeah.
Wasn't Joe Thornton good
We
friends
call
with
those replicas,
Joe
right?
Pavelski?
Yes. Very good friends. See how
He didn't hear me though.
He doesn't hear it. He can't get the chicken thing. He can't get the Pavelski thing today. He's sidetracked. Now he's texting again.
He's trying to work on why our microphones are a weird
Yes.
level. So
And see, we got no dings on
'Cause our-
Pavelski,
Because our
no
manager,
dings on Chicken Little, nothing.
our
I need
man-
4 arms to produce
He
this show
does.
right
He
now.
our
needs to-
manager
needs
is
to be
telling him
Octopus.
that we sound bad and
So,
we are not good.
back to the Bruins fan base.
Yes.
They're saying that they're struggling to score, which they are not doing well with that. And it appears that Jim Montgomery is splitting up their best line right now, which happens to be their fourth line,
Yeah, I was going to say.
which is, I think, Letty, a move to try to get other lines going, because
Yes.
right now that fourth line is really clicking for the Bruins.
So I was looking at some numbers, and that top line, all minus players, that fourth line that they had together, which was, what was it? Kepke, Beecher, and Kostelik, right?
Yep.
They were plus 26, that fourth line. I mean, that's pretty damn
and
good.
Kepke's leading the team in scoring
Yeah.
as a guy that has played, I think, 26, 27 NHL games prior to this year.
And what does a fourth line player typically play like? We talk about the way
He's
that
averaging
our
10
fourth
minutes
guy,
a game, and
they're
he's leading
digging
them in
around
scoring.
in the corners. They're going to the front of
Energy.
the net. They're making it difficult on their opponent. And so they're trying to take little pieces and inject it into those other lines to hopefully dig a couple pucks out. And not only that, we've got a fourth line player playing on our line, and he's outplaying us right now. He's the one that's setting the way to go. So I think that's what they're trying to get at here.
Hey, John, I think my microphone was unplugged, so hopefully I sound better now.
Oh,
'Cause
well,
I
that would probably explain it.
It
'cause-
literally
So is he just coming
I
through
felt
mine?
it, and it was starting to come
All
out.
right, so now you're going to be way too high.
I'm probably
then,
way
is gonna
too
be the
loud
issue.
because I was probably being
Do
picked
we have
up
to do
by.
a live mic check now?
Remember when he
I just don't
pulled
know
it
why
out?
this was unplugged, but anyway, we did a mic check and everything was fine.
So off that, one funny thing that's kind of interesting relatively is that
Who's playing with this, by the way? Who's hitting the button and unplugging the mic?
Speaking of way
I mean,
too high, is he
Kavanaugh.
way too high? Do we have a sponsor for that?
For what?
not yet,
No.
Not yet.
not yet. But
What's it bring me off a high?
what's
Or was that just maybe that's
I'm
Blue
trying
Chew?
to talk about
Herman
hockey.
Marshall?
It could be Blue Chew.
What's funny relatively is that all the stuff about Boston, and maybe again it's because of that fan base and how extreme they are on things, but everyone's saying how they're not scoring and they're struggling so much to score. They're scoring 3 goals a game. The Stars are scoring 2.7. So if they're not scoring, the Stars are really not scoring.
Yes, but the difference is that the Stars are a much better defensive team.
Yes, they have
But here's the
11
thing.
fewer goals against.
Discipline seems to be a problem. And I thought this was really fascinating because Letty was texting us this morning, and I went and did some digging on it. The Bruins are the number 1 team in a bunch of categories, or second. They're second in the league in penalty minutes, 100. They're second in penalty minutes per game at 14 minutes and 17. 14 minutes a game in penalties. They are first in penalties taken at 43, first in minors with 39, second with majors with 4. And Luds, you pointed out a really interesting part of that, which was who are taking those penalties and who they are on that team.
When I say frustration, I think a lot of it's frustration, and it could be not playing well. But they're new. They bring over Nikita Zadorov, and he's number 1 in the league actually in taking penalties. But he is 6'8" and big and plays big. I think where they may have made a mistake with him is they put him up with McAvoy on the top pairing. He's not a top pairing defenseman. It's Chara-ish, right? So he's a big body. He can play physical.
But
he can
he's
move
not
people in front of that.
Chara-ish on the other end
No,
of the ice.
exactly. And I think that you send the wrong message with some players by putting them up there. The big signing. So the other one, Zadorov, I said was number 1. McAvoy is number 5. Pasternak is 13th, and Brad Marchand is 20th. There's 4 of their guys in the top 20.
And by the way, McAvoy is
taking
top
penalties.
5 in minors.
Yeah.
So they've taken some other frustration penalties, but
That's what I mean. And I think Pasta took a 10-minute and he was yapping or something like that too. So their best players are frustrated. And those are the ones, and we've talked about it, the little pokey thing from Monty and Marchand on the bench and stuff like that. And they both basically poo-pooed the whole thing, which you knew they'd do that. and I thought Marchand stated it the best way. Hey, it'd have been wrong if he wouldn't have told me. So they're gonna take the high road on that. And but you can tell that's just what it is. It's out of frustration when your best players are sitting in the box and putting you shorthanded. It's a problem.
let's take a look at the Bruins lines real quick, Sam, because the other side of that is Brad Marchand, their captain. He leads the league in penalties drawn with 9. So Zadorov has
Shocker.
9 penalties taken. Marchand has 9 penalties drawn. Bruins are second in the league in drawing penalties. So basically, they play high aggression games on both sides.
Yeah, it's a coin toss, right? Which one's going to be? He's going to get a penalty or he's going to draw a penalty. He reminds me, obviously, very similar style player to Matthew Tkachuk, who I think led the league in drawing penalties, whether it was last year or the year before that. But that's why I'm interested in this game, because the Bruins are physical, and you mentioned they're big. And it's going to be a real test for Dallas to keep up with the physicality, and if the Stars don't have the intensity like we've seen in Buffalo, things like that, it is going to be very, very noticeable early. And 1, will they have it? And 2, if they don't have it to start, will they be able to get it?
Well, let's look at this forward group again, because Luddy, I can understand the top line. Marchand along with Lindholm and Pasternak. That's a legit first line, no doubt. Morgan Geekie, okay, good, decent middle 6 player. Pavel Zacha's really good. Matthew Poitras got hurt, but they really like him coming up. Coyle is, again, a really good guy, and he's really, embraced the Boston roots. And I love the guys in the fourth line. But I know Koepke's having a great start to the season. it feels like they're missing something in the top 6. Is this a one-line team when it comes to really dynamic offense?
Well, Zaka's a good player, but it's who he's playing with. I mean, it's like they need, and I think they've talked about it. They're looking down the road. It's a cap thing for them, just like it is a lot of players that down the road they can move a couple of these pieces around and maybe bring somebody in there, I guess, depending on where they're at. But yeah, they got all their eggs in one basket on the top.
I would be very comfortable if that second line was my third line.
Well, here's the interesting thing. When they ran the warm-up lines, they actually had it switched. So Coyle, Frederick, and Koepke went second. Zaka, Geekie, and Poitras went third.
Either way. Both of those are third lines to me.
You're basically saying is they have 3 third lines.
Yeah, they have third lines and fourth lines.
Before the Stars had Matt Duchene playing with Seguin and Marchment, they had Robertson, Hintz, Pavelski, Ding, and nothing else. But again, they had Jamie Benn, they had Tyler Seguin. They had incomplete lines. Duchene completed that line, right? And Marchment did. And I feel like that's where the Bruins are. Let's look at their D right now real quick. Again, I think McAvoy is a legit offensive number 1 guy. Hampus Lindholm, they're really big happy for. The other 4, how do you feel about them?
See, they've got Zadorov, I think, where he needs to be on that second pairing. He's not playing 28 minutes with McAvoy. And there were so many, I watched a few clips of Boston, and Zadorov's up ice all the time. And he can skate well, but that's not who he is. He's got to be that guy. And I think that, the good news for Dallas is when you have 3 lines, when they're running well, they'll take advantage of that Witherspoon and, Peak or Peck or whatever his name is.
Yep.
Even not having last change. That's what you're going to have to try to find ways to keep that third pair away from, their top 2-3 lines for Dallas.
That's what's kind of interesting this season. Sorry to cut you off. I just looking at teams, when we look at lines for teams that they're playing, it's interesting. You don't always look at the third pair or the third and fourth lines of their teams because you're like, all right, that's not going to make a huge difference. But with Dallas playing how they do and having 4 lines and 3 defensive pairs, it really matters now if those teams have a fourth line and a third line, because all of a sudden, if they don't, they can really take advantage if you're Dallas.
And obviously, we spent a lot of time talking about Jeremy Swayman over the last couple of weeks. We don't probably need to hype him up too much. He's very good. He got paid. But to me, guys, it's milestone night for 2 Dallas Stars that we do need to talk about before the pregame show ends. Roope Hintz tonight plays in his 400th career NHL game. Jason Robertson in his 300th. And look, Hintz has been great. Robo's been even better as the fact that he's actually caught him in career points in 100 fewer games. But 2 milestones for these guys. And when you look at the numbers, Roope Hintz is the 12th highest scoring player in the 2015 draft class. That's really good. Jason Robertson, 5th most points in the 27 draft picks. 2 big guys, 2 very important members of this club.
If you would have asked me that, not before you give me those numbers, I'd have thought 250 games. It's just how fast time goes.
Yeah.
Like it's amazing to me that those guys between them have 700 games.
It's insane, right?
Yeah.
So, speaking of which, a couple games for Brendan Smith, he'll hit 700 for his career. He's 2 away. So, and then Jake Ottinger 2 away from 200. So, a lot of big milestones. Anything in particular, we'll start with Leds and then go to Sam, that you're looking for tonight that we haven't already covered?
I think this is the perfect team for Dallas to get out from that, whatever you want to call their power play. They may get some chances on it tonight, and I think that this could be the night that they're going to snap out of it and get a couple power play goals.
Can I give you a number of that? So the Bruins are 9th with an 82.9 penalty kill percentage, which sounds great. Their last 4 games, they're at only 72%, giving up 5 in those last 4. So that's not a great trend.
They've been running around, and hopefully they continue to run around, and Dallas will take advantage of it. But I hope Dallas's power play, we've been talking about ways that we want to see them get a little bit more aggressive in front of the net and get more pucks to the net and entries. Let's get in with the puck or dump it in and go get it.
Yeah, I think power play is huge tonight. I think for 2 reasons. 1, to get off the schneid a little bit, and I think it's a good team to do it. They're obviously reeling a little bit. But 2, we've talked about faceoffs and how the Stars have struggled this year. I think there's something like 22nd in the NHL. Power play faceoffs, they are dead last at 40% on the power play. That is a huge statistic.
On the power
faceoffs
play.
On the power play. They need to win those faceoffs in all areas, but specifically on the power play to help it get out of the rut.
Well, we might not have started off this pregame show on the right foot with microphone being unplugged and people laughing and John not knowing if we're even on, but we knew we were on.
But sounds like a normal show to me.
I think we finished with some good, solid hockey talk. So that's it for the pregame show. Stick around. We're going to watch the game on Victory Plus with you guys. And then it's post-game show time. Make sure you hit that chat. The diehard part the super chats. If you want to get to the front of the line, we'll do all that stuff. Maybe Sam will even look at the Discord during the game. Who's to say? So thanks for watching. Enjoy tonight's game, Stars and Bruins.
We all silly like the mayor.